clarity, capabilities, confidence, action steps, direction, and simplicity. This is what you receive with growthtofreedom.com. Freedom is the new capital, and we're helping leaders, executives, business owners, and you transform your career, business, life, and relationships. This is the Growth to Freedom Show. Now, here is your host, Dan Kuschell.
Welcome to growthtofreedom.com, the show that brings you leadership, inspiration, and transformation. And today is no exception. In fact, I want you to imagine for a second, we're going to have a journey together today because I want to have you imagine that you come up with an idea, not just any mediocre idea, but a great idea that has legs. And that idea with legs turns into a business that you love, that you're passionate about, that you go out and you start building your business. And you start growing your business. And you go through some of the growing pains of building and growing a business, of course. And then a handful of years later, you're in a position where you can actually sell that business if you choose to. You can exit that business and you cash in. I want you to imagine that for a second, what that would do for your family, your legacy, the ability to have freedom, the ability to have a big impact, a contribution. Maybe it's a legacy play for you, your family, your kids. Well, the reason I start off with that, and by the way, thanks for making us part of your day today here at Growth to Freedom. If you want to get in on the conversation, you can join us on Twitter at Dan_Kuschell. That's Dan_Kuschell. Or hit us up on email at info@growthtofreedom.com. I'd encourage you to go back and re-listen to this episode and get access to the full scope of show notes here at growthtofreedom.com/75. Our guest expert today is just that. That journey that I just described to you, he's an expert at working with business owners and entrepreneurs to be able to do just that. He founded the Braveheart planning process. He's the CEO of Long Business Advisors. He provides business coaching for entrepreneurs and business owners, maybe like you and I. His past life, he was a lawyer. Don't hold that against him, mind you. And he's a certified financial planner and now what is called a certified exit planner. So he's an expert at being able to show you how to grow, scale, and then set your company up to exit. He's been in the wealth management field and has had a wealth management firm since 1985. Now think about that, 1985. What were you doing in 1985? How many cycles in the stock market, in mutual funds, in the markets have we experienced, and how many advisors have we seen come and go? Well, Randy Long is our expert and guest today. He's been through the ups, he's been through the downs, he's helped a lot of clients experience some of the bliss of success and get through some of the stumbling blocks as well. And today we're going to talk about his brand new book, The Braveheart Exit, 7 Steps to Your Family Business Legacy. Because let's face it, that's what you want to leave, isn't it? A legacy. So Randy, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dan. I appreciate that a whole lot.
Absolutely. Well, I want to dive right into it. And I've had a chance to read segments of your book. I haven't had a chance to go through the whole thing yet, but I'm excited to finish it. But I know you talk about a few key things. First of all, let's back up for a second. Entrepreneurship, building and growing a business. You've seen a lot since 1985 and working with all kinds of clients. What do you find is the biggest mistake or myth that people have in building and growing a business as it relates to setting it up to exit and leave that legacy?
A lot of mistakes I see, honest. One of them is that owners presume that they know the value of their business.
Oh, yeah.
We see a lot of mistakes in that side where they presume the business is worth more than it is. That's the most common side of it, although we have had a couple of circumstances where the owners didn't understand the value of their business and we were able to take it to sale and manage a sale that got 3 to 4 times more than they thought it was worth. So once in a while we run across those gems, but that's more rare. Other examples of mistakes, I suppose I'd say, is trying to sell the business on their own, because unless you are an expert at controlled auctions and things like that, you shouldn't be playing in that space. And when you take a business to sale, everybody has a key role to play. You've got to have a really good lawyer, a deal lawyer. You've got to have a good M&A firm. You've got to have good advisors, tax people, etc. It's time to get out of the sandbox and you're in the big boy leagues there. And you need to go to war with some serious weapons there. So that's another mistake I see sometimes. And I also, failing to build a next level management team, thinking that they can be the person that should be building the business and everything should be riding on their shoulders and they're the big kahuna of everything. All that does is minimize the value of the business on the time of sale. So there's a couple of major mistakes I see in for the business owners.
And boy, howdy. I mean, I've run 11 companies since 1992, and in the late 2000s, I sold a couple of my companies. I had built them up to over $15 million a year at 170 employees. Yep. And man, I can tell you, I experienced all of these mistakes where one, until I got my valuation done by a professional, and I was trying to do it on my own. I certainly thought my company was worth a whole lot more. The selling it on your own, of course, I took that to heart, and I was going to try to do that. And then it became very obvious very quickly. You got to bring some experts and have a dream team, just like you would a great leadership team. And then the next level management team, the big thing to realize. And I want to talk. In fact, I want to ask you, what do you see for small business, right? There's all kinds of different levels. There's the grassroots cash flow, bootstrap business versus the Silicon Valley model, right?
Right.
And they're two different exit strategies. Let's talk about the bootstrap model for a second. What do you see as a common, and of course, this isn't 100% all the way across the board on every single company, but for small business owners, Randy, what do you see as the greatest asset that most people misunderstand the value of in their business, that if they positioned it right would actually leverage them into something bigger and probably a greater sale potential? Yeah,
if they can build a business that has, recurring revenue streams so that they're not starting over every year, and every year isn't a new business, cycle, if you will. So to be able to build some sort of a back end into everything they do, if they can position their company so that there's some piece of that thing that is growing organically every year, so that they're not having to reconquer everything from year to year to year. So trying to find business models that have back ends in them and recurring revenues is a really nice piece, and we're able to do that sometimes and find examples available to these people that they haven't really thought about. And because what we've got to do as much as possible, we've got to move these people off of the dime of having everything rely on their showing up to work.
Yes.
Because to the extent that everything is going to, the relationships, the intellectual property, the execution, to the extent that any of those things rely on the business owner, those things are going to seriously minimize any kind of EBITDA work that we're going to get out of a sale of a business.
And I want to back up too. And by the way, if you're new and you're listening and maybe new to business or never heard the term EBITDA, Randy, can you just define that real quick?
Yeah, it's earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation. So basically, it's the earnings of a business. And when we talk about multiples, if you think about Wall Street type of companies that are basically sold on the New York Stock Exchange, et cetera, they are sold at some multiple of earnings. So, if they getting a 5 times or 10 times or whatever earnings is how you get value built in a company relative to just earning income that a small company would earn income. And if the income is based on the person's individual efforts, then to sell the company, somebody else has just got to come in and do the work themselves, and it's another personal company. All you're really doing is selling a job, not really a company.
Yes.
And so if you can sell a business for multiples like they get on Wall Street, which is the key, I told you earlier about a company that really had underestimated the value. We took a company basically that was very profitable, but we took it outside of a local and regional market into the international markets, and we were able to sell that company to a larger company, which was typically used to paying international multiples. And that totally blew them out of the water.
Not surprising. I mean, I think your quote there, be careful of selling a job versus selling a company, right? Which is so critical to be thinking about, the recurring revenue. And, by the way, let's talk about where we got introduced. Of course, we met through Genius Network. Joe Polish, your brother, who I've stayed in touch with for, multiple years, got us connected together. And, what a privilege it is to be a part of that community together and help serve each other. And I know you bring a lot of value. I remember about a month and a half ago, we had a Genius Network meeting, and the discussion about selling your company came up. And guess what happened? 80% of the room that raised their hand expressed they had misconceptions, misunderstandings about selling their company and ran into roadblocks. And imagine having a tool like this. So as you're watching right now or listening, what if you had the ability to go out there and get a company started from the beginning. You know, there's the old quote, Randy, that you know probably pretty well, which is begin with the end in mind, right?
Right.
And essentially what you have put together, and as I see it in the Braveheart exit, is about building, growing it, and exiting it, even if you don't want to exit it. And
That's right.
it lays a foundation for you to be able to go out there and have clarity in what you're really building in your business. You know, John Paul DeJoria, who was at Genius Network, as you know, last year that we were there together, Randy, he says, you know, you're not in the order business, you're in the reorder business. And, you know, if I hear what you're saying is that's what building a recurring revenue model is all about, right?
Correct.
Is that reorder type model. Another great asset to be thinking, what is your thought about the asset of the list or the following in a particular company?
Boy, I tell you what, I am growing in my appreciation for that. I have to tell you, because over the course of my career, you know, I've helped everybody else, and I'm guilty of this because I have this like bias towards taking care of people. It's built into me, and so for me to see other people's success it gives me great joy. And so as a result of that, I have focused primarily on the relationship and the work that I do and seeing the joy brought to the families and the businesses by the planning work that we do in them. But in the past, you know, year or two, and I'm really just coming to this, I have to admit this to you, of course, that this is something that we are working on right now, that we're starting to work on rolling out our own ability to deal with many, many, many more people at a level, because we also realize that I wrote the book for that reason, frankly, because I realized there aren't that many people that do what we do, and there are the generation that's going through getting ready to retire and to X out and move on. That's one big role, and of course there's a whole bunch of people that are going to have many, many exits along the way. It has nothing to do with age.
That's right. And by the way, Randy, because we're going to go to break here, you know, when we come back, we're going to talk, I mean, if you were going to build a business anyway, what if you could actually do it the right way from the beginning? Whether you wanted to exit or not, set it up so you owned the business instead of it owning you, and you working on it instead of in it. That and a whole lot more with Randy Long right after this. If I could show you a way that with just a 1% improvement in 6 key areas of your life, that you could go out and get the exponential breakthroughs you deserve mentally, physically, socially, spiritually, and emotionally, what would that do for you? Well, we put together our special resource package for you with our best-selling book, video program, and audio program that's yours right now for free when you pick up the phone and call 602-246-3389. That's 602-246-3389, or visit the site at growthtofreedom.com/mastery. Welcome back to growthtofreedom.com. We're here with expert Randy Long, who's a certified exit planner, author of the best-selling book, The Braveheart Exit, 7 Steps to Your Family Business Legacy. And here's the thing. What if you could get an idea off the ground, launch a business, and set it up to exit? And even if you didn't want to exit, you could actually spend more time working on your business instead of in your business. Well, really, that's what this book, The Braveheart Exit, is all about. And the concepts that Randy's been sharing are going to help you avoid some of the stopgaps, the shortcomings, the mistakes that a lot of us have made. I know in selling a couple of my companies over the year, I think I felt like I was the only one making all these mistakes, Randy. And quite frankly, at the end of some of these, it was depressing. It wasn't the joyous experience I was expecting it to be. And there's actually an emotional attachment for some of us that sell our companies that actually becomes a strategy in and of itself to be thinking about in handing off that legacy to someone else. Isn't that true?
Yeah, it really is. We always try to tell people that we don't want to do any planning for them until we know what they're going to. So if they're planning to transition to what? Not just that they're getting out, but what are they going to? Because we've seen too many people that are like us, that are entrepreneurs, when they get out of the game, unless they have a real reason to be out, we need to know what they're going to so they don't run into depression, because that's what will happen if we don't plan for that well.
And I have to admit, I just being transparent here in the show, I ran into that in a big, hard way.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was, and I know it sounds like that's commonplace that you see that if it's not handled properly. And I apparently didn't handle it properly, because it was a tough role. And then on top of that, for my most recent sale in the late 2000s, which was, awesome. It was exciting, right? And
Yes.
It was on part of it, it was cash and an earnout built in. And you know what happens in most of those type of what's called an earnout. And by the way, an earnout, Randy, why don't you define an earnout before we get into that, what happened to me in that? And I want to help you avoid what happened to me in that type of a scenario, by the way. So there is more coming to this story. But Randy, first tell people what an earnout model is in a sale or exit.
Good. I will do that. So when we are approaching a close of sale, the company that's buying makes an offer. We accept the offer, and the way they want to pay it is by some of it's going to be up cash, and that might be 70, 80, 90%. And the rest of it has to do with you sold us on the idea that we're going to pay X amount of money because you sold us on the idea that this business was going to continue to grow, and these are your projections. And by the way, in the event this business doesn't hit your projections in the next year, we want some of the money back. So we're going to hold some of the money back to see whether or not the business actually hits the projections. If it doesn't hit the projections, we keep the money.
Yes, they keep the money.
That's an earnout.
Yes. And everybody I've ever talked to now, having gone through it, I thought, again, I was the only one. And most people I've talked to in an earnout situation, it doesn't usually work out that well. And
that's right.
I always
tell the people, listen, you just remember that. If you're not happy with the money you're getting paid without the earnout, don't sell it for that.
That's right. That's right. In fact, what's one of the biggest success traps that you see for, maybe it's, I don't know, maybe that it would even have to be in the exit part of the business, but even just running a business, like, again, you've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs in your wealth management firm since 1985. So, I mean, you've helped ultra wealthy clients for well over a couple decades, in fact, right? Almost 3 decades. Over 3 decades, 85, 90. See, I'm good at math here. You could tell I'm a wizard, right? But what do you see as one of the biggest success traps that entrepreneurs or business owners make in building and growing their company?
The biggest one I probably see is the idea that the business owner is focused on growth. They're good at what they do. They're, type A plus personality people.
Yep.
They're driven. It's all about
control freaks.
Absolutely, control freaks. Grow. But the mistake there is the fact that what they should be doing is grow, plan. Because to the extent, after they reach a certain level of success, without the planning to go along with it, they have a partner that has hopped on board with them called the IRS.
Yes.
And the IRS is all of a sudden a really big partner in their future growth. So
yes.
one of the things that we have to do is plan to eliminate or minimize the IRS's impact on the value of taking some of the value of your business away from you or your heirs. So that's one big thing. The other one has to do with, and there's many of these things, there's planning for so many different issues that I tell people that we have to employ what we call the 1% solution. And that is the idea that if I was going to manage money for a pension plan, people are going to pay me 1.5, whatever percent of money it is typical in the industry. And they're happy to do that for their $1 million or $2 million IRAs. But they don't want to spend what their net worth is. 70-90% of their net worth is tied up in the business. But they don't want to spend money to manage the biggest asset they have, to help it grow, to protect it, to give opportunity. And so it's penny wise and pound foolish, and it's frustrating. But they don't think about, nor are they willing sometimes to spend money on the thing that is going to have the biggest impact on their life, which is the management of that business, the growth of that business.
And what are some of the ways that you've seen that people can actually do that in a very successful, healthy way, just out of curiosity?
Sure. Okay. So one simple way is, as your company grows, the professionals, for example, that are helping you when you're a small company aren't appropriate for once you hit mid-market.
Isn't that true?
And I'll give you a really quick example about this. For one of my companies, for 4 years, I tried to tell these people, we have to move to another CPA firm. We have to move. The CPA firm is not qualified. Of course, refused to move with me because it was an old friend kind of a thing. And then we had a $4 million IRS liability show up, penalties, etc. And so then I brought in a tax attorney, of course, to solve it. The tax attorney said, I checked the records. Mr. Long's told you to fire your CPA firm for 4 years. I'm going to fire him for you. Please leave, and excuse them from the room. We hired another CPA firm, and then we had to go and deal with that IRS problem. But that's one thing, right? Simple, but I can go with many, many more of these, but that's one. you are going to outgrow your professionals if you continue to grow.
That is so incredibly important. I mean, I'm laughing in part because I'm thinking through my experience and, my 11 companies. And then, of course, now I'm fortunate to, have met people like you through Genius Network and Joe and, all the different stories that we all have, overall.
Oh, yeah.
Now, as you look at like what you do for your clients, right?
Yep.
What's the superpower that you guys have, overall compared to, say, others out there in the marketplace?
Yeah, I would say that the thing that differentiates us and a few others, there aren't a lot of people that do what we do, frankly, but what we're trying to do for people is the plan, grow thing, but the idea is that we are doing it from a position of a 30,000-foot view. And if you think about this for a moment with me, I'm also a certified financial planner, so I know how they're trained. They're trained to do personal planning. But if my net worth is 90% of my net worth is in my business, and you want to plan for my personal side, what we do is we come in through the business and we attack the business because it makes up most of the net worth.
Keeping in mind that begin with the end in mind, that selling, there's a big difference between selling a job versus selling your company, which is why you want to begin with the end. You want to understand the true asset value of your company. One of the best ways is to build what Randy calls recurring revenue or you're in the reorder business and how you can create a greater opportunity to have a greater sale potential, what's called multiple of EBITDA, if you set this up the right way from the day. And we're just scratching the surface, I know, Randy, with your book, The Braveheart Exit. I mean, there's just so much great wisdom in this. And one of the things that I'm curious about, because I dealt with this in my companies as we built it, like I started again, I've had 11. So one company became 5 companies in the early to mid to late 2000s, right?
Yeah.
And I'd started in like a 400 square foot den in my house. And then I got a 400 square foot office with 2 or 3 people. And then it became another side office. And then we slowly took over and became 14,000 feet of this office complex. And then outgrew that because it was more like an old hotel. And then we went into a Class A office segment, which wasn't necessarily the best idea, but I knew I was setting up for a potential sale.
Yeah.
And then we gained a lot of momentum in the area. And I used to have competitors send their team members or key team members in to interview because we had processes. So talk about the idea, number one, of why process in your business is so, what do you see as like the most important? It's a layered question, so you can kind of jump. So processes in your company, what would you say if you had to pick, what are a couple of the key processes for companies to focus on today if they're newer, right? If you were starting over and you had to start with 1 or 2 processes, what would they be? And lastly, this idea of people coming in and shopping your stuff, or I don't know if I'd call it a fishing expedition or whatever. So take it from there.
So let me start on the process side. I'll start with the small business people on this because too often, as we talk about downloading the wisdom of the owner into processes themselves, so being able to go into the owner's head, if you will, and dissect what it is that he actually does or he or she does and how they do it and why they do it, and build that out into models then that other people can step into and execute so that we can eliminate the need for the owner to be the person that's doing the work. We have to do that. So building in whatever those processes are, depending on whatever business we are, to download from the owner into actionable processes that other people can step into, and we can divide that job into however many processes and people and grow it and scale it that way. Because if we can't ever get it out of the house, out of the head of the owner, and we're dependent on him, we will only be selling a job, and we've got to defeat that.
And I seem to recall you covered this in chapter 5 of your book, I think under Value Catalyst, right? And about building and growing your team, recurring revenue models, growth strategies, financial controls, proprietary technologies. So if you had to look at it, and again, I'm not going to tie an anchor to this answer, but just maybe as a general overview for entrepreneurs who maybe don't have great systems yet, if you were going to start with like 1 or 2 of the most important systems. I mean, I have my own perspective on it, but I'd love to get your take on it. Like for me, I would start with creating a killer sales and or marketing system,
right?
Because I feel that has real multiplier potential in the asset value of a company's growth. But as an expert, what would you say is like the 1 or 2 most important?
Yeah, I would say that has to be number 1 because it's the engine. of growth is the marketing and sales side of things. So there's nothing to do if there's no work coming in the door. So that has to be the first thing. I think actually the second thing is the people side, and that is building, a culture and building a process. So hiring the right people, getting the right people for your culture, qualified people that are going to be happy in what they do. So I'm all about, to me, the sales and marketing side is first and the people is second. And actually how you do things is, to me, is third.
That is so critical because, I see people get kind of caught up in like all kinds of processes around, maybe, I don't know, like turning on the lights in an office or some stuff like that, right? And, there's something much bigger, right?
There is. So those are my first two choices. I know people would disagree with me with that, but I think that we've got to get the sales and the people and the process third thing.
Grab a pen, grab a paper, jot down some notes. I've got about 3.5 pages of notes here from Randy already. Plus, I've gone through his book. I want to encourage you to go get his book, The Braveheart Exit, 7 Steps to Your Family Business Legacy. And we've left off on Chapter 6, Business Durability. We're talking about getting an estate plan in place. In other words, protect your assets. You can do that in a lot of different ways. And, Randy will talk more about that here in a second. Now, Randy, one of the things I found running my company that I alluded to earlier, and you're kind of having me relive some of my experiences, and on one end it's good, and on another I'm going, some of the pain and frustrating things that you deal with as an entrepreneur. But we develop thick skin as entrepreneurs and business owners, don't we?
Yep, we do.
Yeah, so talk about people taking you on a ride or a fishing expedition or shopping you just to slow you down, if not steal your stuff or your ideas.
Yeah, so early on, we talked about one of the mistakes that business owners make is trying to sell the business on their own. And so one of the reasons why it's a mistake is because since they don't really know what the process looks like, what the buyer should be doing at the various stages of the purchase, they don't know when the buyer is actually looking into and doing things that aren't normal in a purchase. And they're spending too much time going through the intellectual capital
yes.
that the business has, and they're learning the trade secrets, and they're doing, and if they're not moving forward in the other parts of the buy, if you will, that are necessarily supposed to be going on, that these people typically aren't really looking to close at all. They're just looking to search through your company and learn the trade secrets or the intellectual property or the processes or possibly the value of your people, or who knows what they're looking for. We both have a friend named John Bowen that had this very thing happen to him. He's a sophisticated guy, had a wealth management firm, and thought that he, hadn't sold a company himself, but he got an offer from a New York big bank, and they sent people down to his really cool wealth management firm, and they spent some days going through his stuff, and yet things just didn't seem to be progressing. So he called up a buddy of his who was an M&A guy, mergers and acquisitions guy, and his buddy told him, hey, John, they're never going to close. They're doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and they're not moving forward in a way that is with integrity. You need to get them out of there ASAP.
Yes.
And he was like, oh, I didn't want to hear that, you know?
Yep.
So, but he was right. He dumped them out because they had no intention. They just wanted to know how John was doing what he was doing and how he had grown that business so fast.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, wow. I mean, it's so interesting. So one side of it is, of course, there's these things that are just part of the game, right? They're success traps. And if you're going to play the game, you got to know that there are traps. And the good part about what you do is you reveal those traps in the Braveheart Exit, right? So now, like I think about prior to my business, maybe a decade or 15 years ago, if I would have had your book, The Braveheart Exit, I would have been protected, most importantly, with confidence. Dan Sullivan, we're both in strategic coach as well. Yep. And Dan says the most important thing we can protect is our confidence, right?
Right.
And so what you really have done is you've put together a playbook, a blueprint, again, to build it, grow it, exit it, even if you don't want to exit officially, but set it up so that you can be working more on it instead of in it and enjoy more of the fruits of the labor of what is going on. And what would you say to somebody who might be hearing us discuss some of these success traps going, oh my God, well, I don't know if I want to deal with all these moving parts, so to speak, and I've got a little concern or fear. What would you say to speak to that fear or that voice someone might have in their head as they're listening to us right now about building and selling their company?
Well, I'd say knowledge is power.
Yes.
And the reason I wrote this book was because I wanted to give, it is not written as a textbook. Let me be real clear about that.
That's true.
It's written as a guidebook, as a process, and with lots of examples and stories, so you can see that everybody else is human too and make mistakes. So, you can learn a lot from other people's mistakes, both and from their successes. And so we have some of all of that in that book. But knowledge is power, and it'll help you get a really good framework about what should happen, when should it happen, who should be on the bus, what seat should they be on the bus with me. And it'll give you a sense of, where you are, and it'll help you be wise in the process. And knowing what you know will save you in so many ways. I can't even tell you. It's such a broad. The hard part about this whole thing, even writing a book, and to try to make it simple enough to be effective and yet broad enough to cover the real issues, was a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge, I have to tell you, and to make it readable and fun at the same time. And honestly, I think we've done that. It's gotten really great reviews, and so I'm very proud of the work. It's not, mistake-free, I'm sure, but it's been really helpful to people. I've gotten many, many, many comments back on it.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got some of the top experts in the world who've endorsed your book, people like Dan Sullivan, of course, right? You've got, people like Rod Martin, you've got Richard Viguerie, John Bowen. I mean, a lot of people from Genius Network have, shared the value of your book and all the wisdom you share. Now, speaking, because we've been talking about the Braveheart exit, why don't you tell everybody what it takes to have a Braveheart? In Chapter 12, one of the quotes that I pulled out and earmarked that I just love in that section is, I don't want you to be merely successful. I want you to live and leave a legacy.
Right.
So speak to that a little bit.
That's right. So the whole idea about why we called the book The Braveheart Exit has to do with the fact that I've always seen, the small and medium-sized business owners as heroes. I really have. I mean, I think they're the ones that they take the risk. They don't have the government's help. They don't have protections. They don't have trade protect. They don't have anything except their wit, their willingness to take risk, their ingenuity. It's what made America great to begin with. And so I respect these people tremendously. And that's the reason why I have so much joy in working with them. So the whole concept of the Braveheart is those people, and I want them to do well. I want them not just to be focused just on making money, but the idea of stewardship needs to be reintroduced to us as a people. It used to be part of who we were. We've kind of gotten away from some of that, but the whole idea of stewardship, of caring for each other, taking care of your family, caring about your employees, these are people that are investing their lives to help you grow this business. We have to value that. So, and as we do that on a company-by-company level and family-by-family level, we make America great again. I mean, this is a big deal to me.
And it shows. And I mean, the respect that you have for them, I can share with you based on feedback and also us having a chance to spend time together ourselves, as well as, the interactions you've had at Genius Network. They respect you. Yeah, and you are doing a great thing. Now, how can people learn more about what you do, whether it's go get the book directly? How can people go get the book directly? What do you want them to do to be able to make that happen?
Yeah, so the book is on Amazon. It's real easy to get to these days because of that, and it's in Barnes & Noble and other places and such too. So it should be mostly available pretty much anywhere. We have a book website is randymlong.com, which is all about the book itself, and then longbusinessadvisors.com is our company website where we do exit planning and business coaching, and we manage sales of companies for people that are actually ready for that, or to get companies ready for sale. We do a fair amount of that too. So we love the work, of course, and we deal with people we like. So you need to be likable.
Yes.
You know how that is, Dan, right? Life is too short to work with people that are just sour. So.
That's it. Someone else can have the sour grapes. I want
That's
the
right.
juicy. I want the juicy ones.
That's right.
So I want to encourage you to go find out what Randy's doing. Go get his book, number one. It's a great read. If you're looking for somebody that has been there, done that, not only himself, but done it and helped other people do it, and he's done it since 1985, this book will give you a great reference to see what Randy and his team are all about. They're a team that are servant leaders is the way I would describe what you're doing, Randy. You have a brave heart. You attract people who have a brave heart. So you can go learn more about what Randy's doing at randymlong.com or go check out longbusinessadvisors.com. So again, randymlong.com, longbusinessadvisors.com, and get the darn book, The Braveheart Exit, 7 Steps to Your Family Business Legacy. Now, since you talk about legacy, and it is a core value that you have, and your family's important to you. You've got 4 kids. You've been married for 5 kids, and married for 33 years. If you were to turn to your wife right now and thank her for something as it relates to what she's helped give you and your ability to be an entrepreneur, to make a difference, to go make an impact and a contribution the way you do, what would you tell your wife right now?
I would tell my wife, I would thank her for giving me the freedom to be who I needed to be. I have to have integrity both with myself, with her, with my children, with the Lord God. I mean, I have to have all these things, firing on all cylinders for me to be who I'm supposed to be. And she has been one awesome wife and one awesome mother. I mean, my kids, I'm very thankful and very proud of my children. So it's been the best part of life, Dan, has been raising the kids, not the business.
Yes. It's amazing. I have a 10 and an 8-year-old. I talk a lot about my kids in the shows, and as you know, and even in Genius Network, they come up quite a bit too. It's great when you can integrate the business in your life. And I think when people try to separate those, it almost becomes almost a false serving model, it seems. At least that's been my experience watching and observing others go through it. When they completely separate their family life and their business life, it doesn't seem to work as well. And I don't know, maybe that's just my own personal taste or choice, but have you seen that too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I've loved about being self-employed, the freedom of that we get from it, the freedom of being who we are and being self-employed. I've had my kids have all worked at some point in my business. My son, my 4th kid, Micah, helped me write the book. My 2nd kid, Ellen, she's got an MBA and finished her CFP work. She works in our office in North Carolina here. I have, another son in wealth management business in California. We have offices in California too. My kids are just, they've lived, I got a son in law school. They're all interested. Most of them are interested in what we do as a business as well as being part of the family. So it's just a lot of fun for me. That's
awesome. You can hear it in your voice, Randy. I mean, it emanates in what you do. It's who you are. I've gotten a chance also to know your brother, David. You both are, it seems, I think you live next door or something, right?
I do live next door.
That's awesome. That is freaking awesome. I love it. Now, what were you known for in high school, just out of curiosity?
I was known probably most for athletics.
Yeah?
I was here in Wilmington, North Carolina. I was a point guard for the basketball team, all-conference wide receiver in football, and then I ran track, which is ultimately what I got a scholarship for in college. So I was kind of known for athletics and for being a nice guy, actually.
Yeah.
I don't say that, I wasn't a kid that got in trouble, I guess I'll put it that way.
Nice guys can finish first. You're a good example of that.
I don't know about that. But
Speaking of legacy, in 30 seconds or less, what would you say is the legacy that you hope to leave?
The legacy I hope to leave is that first of all, my family, continues to love the Lord and follow Him, that my family knows that they are more important to me than work or money, that the people we work with are people that also share the desire to take care of their families and their employees and to value that and to build a country that is worth living in and that ultimately is a blessing to the rest of the world.
A blessing to the rest of the world. In fact, as you're watching or listening right now, what if you could learn from someone who's a servant leader, who has a desire to be able to help develop other servant leaders and make a big difference, make a big impact. And his name is Randy Long. I want you to go get his book, The Braveheart Exit, 7 Steps to Your Family Business Legacy. You can check him out at longbusinessadvisors.com, randymlong.com. And Randy, guess what? Our segment is done. When time flies when we're having fun, my friend. It's been a pleasure, an honor, and a privilege to be with you today.
You too, brother.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thanks for being with us today. I want to challenge you to take action with what you've been learning from Randy today. I want you to think about beginning with the end in mind, setting your company up for a multiple sale. Apply the strategy of grow, plan, grow, plan, grow, plan. Understand you're going to deal with some of the success traps. Get the book, most importantly. Go to growthtofreedom.com/75. We'll see you next time on growthtofreedom.com. If I could show you a way that with just a 1% improvement in 6 key areas of your life, that you could go out and get the exponential breakthroughs you deserve, mentally, physically, socially, spiritually, and emotionally, what would that do for you? Well, we put together our special resource package for you with our best-selling book, video program, and audio program that's yours right now for free when you pick up the phone and call 602-246-3389. That's 602-246-3389, or visit the site at growthtofreedom.com/mastery.